I never forgot that night. The parlor was quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that makes you hear your own heartbeat. I sat there on the edge of that stiff old sofa, the fabric scratching my skin, and held a picture in my hand. It was me and Grandpa Silas, taken years ago at the lake. My hair was messy, his hat tilted too far back, both of us smiling like the world belonged to us. I traced the edge of the photo with my finger, and for a moment, I wished I could just step back into it. Back when things were simple. Back when I still had someone who believed in me. The front door swung open and laughter spilled in, sharp and careless. My family had arrived. My mother's heels clicked across the hardwood as she called out, "Finally, let's get this over with." My father's booming laugh followed, full of confidence, full of that same superiority I'd been drowning in since I was little. My brother Cole joked with my sister Tessa, their voices bouncing around the room as if I wasn't even there. I stayed where I was, quiet, clutching the photograph tighter. I had learned over the years not to speak unless I wanted to be dismissed or mocked. That was the role I played in this family, the quiet failure, the one they could laugh about when I wasn't around. Sometimes even when I was. My eyes drifted down to the pocket watch in my palm. Grandpa gave it to me the last night he was clear enough to talk. His hands trembled when he pressed it into mine, but his eyes, they were steady. "This is yours, Harper," he whispered. "Don't ever forget how much you mean to me." I remember nodding through the tears, though I didn't fully understand why he said it that way. That watch had never left my side since, the parlor filled with the clinking of glasses. Someone had already opened champagne, as if this reading of his will was some sort of celebration. Tessa smirked when her eyes landed on me. "Didn't expect you to show," she said, her voice dripping with that familiar sarcasm. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I sat straighter, watching as they all took their seats around the long oak table, chattering and laughing, as if Grandpa's death was just another event on their calendar. The lawyer was already laying out her papers, adjusting her glasses, preparing to read the words that would decide our futures. My chest tightened, but my face stayed calm. I had spent years being overlooked, years being told I wasn't good enough, that I had no place in this family. Tonight, they expected to watch me fall one last time, to see me stripped of even the little dignity I had left. But as I brushed my thumb over the smooth metal of that pocket watch, I felt something shift deep inside me. They didn't know the whole story. Not yet. And I almost smiled because I knew Grandpa never forgot me. Growing up in my house felt like walking through a storm without an umbrella. Every dinner turned into some kind of reminder of where I stood. I can still see myself sitting at that long table, staring down at my plate while my dad's voice filled the room. "Cole's got another scholarship offer," he bragged one night, clapping my brother on the back. My mom chimed in with a proud smile. "And Tessa just got invited to that leadership program. Can you believe it?" Then almost like clockwork, their eyes would land on me. My dad would shake his head and mutter, "And Harper?" "Well, she's still figuring it out." Everyone laughed, except me. I just kept chewing, pretending it didn't cut me open. That was my life. Every attempt I made was a failure in their eyes. When I worked nights at the diner, my mom said, "Maybe if you'd studied harder, you wouldn't be flipping burgers." When I auditioned for the school play and didn't get the part, Cole smirked. "Guess you're not cut out for the spotlight." And when one of my art pieces got rejected from a gallery, Tessa rolled her eyes. "Face it, Harper. Not everyone's meant to be talented." I tried to let it slide, to tell myself their words didn't matter. But the truth is, they did. They sank into me, deep enough that sometimes I wondered if they were right. Maybe I was just the leftover child, the one who never measured up. The only person who didn't see me that way was Grandpa Silas. He had this way of making me feel like I wasn't invisible. On Saturday mornings, when everyone else was too busy, he'd take me fishing down by the creek. He'd sit there in his old straw hat, line dangling in the water, and say, "Patience, Harper. That's all life really is, patience." Sometimes we wouldn't catch a thing, but he never cared. He just listened when I told him about the things I wanted to do, about the places I dreamed of going, The art I wanted to create. One afternoon, when I came home after another fight with my mom, he found me crying on the back porch. He sat beside me, silent for a long time, then said, "You've got something they'll never understand. Don't you let their noise drown out your voice." I didn't realize it then, but those words carried me through more nights than I can count. When he got sick, I was the one who stayed by his side. I fed him soup, read him the newspaper when his eyes got too tired, and listened when he told his stories for the 100th time. My parents and siblings came and went, busy with their own lives. But I stayed. I held his hand even when he couldn't speak anymore, and on one of those nights, when the house was quiet and his breaths were shallow, he pressed that pocket watch into my hand. His fingers were cold, but his voice was steady. "You were the one who never gave up on me," he whispered. This is just the beginning." I held on to those words, not knowing just how much they would mean later. The air in the room was thick, like it was holding its breath right along with me. We all sat around the long oak table while the lawyer, Ms. Pierce, adjusted her glasses and shuffled her papers. My father leaned back in his chair, arms folded, looking as confident as ever. My mother tapped her nails against her glass, already smiling like she knew how this was going to turn out. Cole and Tessa whispered to each other, snickering as if the whole thing was a game. Ms. Pierce cleared her throat and began reading. She spoke in that flat, professional tone lawyers use, but every word seemed to land heavy in my chest. Grandpa's money, the land, the stocks, each piece of it went to someone else. To Marissa Lane, I leave. My mother squeezed my father's arm with a grin. To Cole Lane, I leave. My brother smirked at me across the table. To Tessa Lane, I leave. My sister practically glowed with pride. And then there was me. My name came, but there was nothing attached to it. Nothing. Just a line, a pause, and then Ms. Pierce moved on. My stomach dropped, and I swear I felt the blood drain from my face. Cole chuckled under his breath. Guess Grandpa finally saw the truth. Tessa tilted her head, lips curling into that cruel little smile. Don't take it personal, Harper. Not everyone's cut out for the good life. Even my mother laughed, patting my hand like she was doing me a kindness. Maybe this will be the push you need to grow up. My father raised his glass, voice booming. Well, it looks like Silas knew how to reward the ones who actually made something of themselves. He didn't even look at me when he said it. None of them really did. I sat frozen, my throat burning with words I wanted to say but couldn't. My fingers tightened around the pocket watch in my lap, hidden beneath the table. I could almost hear Grandpa's voice telling me to stay patient, to hold steady. But it was hard. It was so hard sitting there while the people who were supposed to be my family celebrated my humiliation like it was some kind of victory. The laughter swelled. Glasses clinked, and for a moment it felt like I wasn't even in the room anymore. I was just a shadow, invisible, exactly how they always treated me. Then, just as I thought it was over, Ms. Pierce frowned and shuffled through her folder again. She pulled out a smaller sealed envelope and held it up. There's one more item, she said slowly. This wasn't in the main file. I found it hidden in Mr. Whitman's desk, marked in his handwriting, to be opened only in front of the family. The room went silent. My mother's smile faltered, my father's glass stopped halfway to his lips, and even Cole and Tessa leaned forward, curiosity sparking in their eyes. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. For the first time that night, every single person at that table was caught off guard. And I knew something was about to change. Ms. Pierce turned the envelope over in her hands like it carried the weight of 100 secrets. My breath caught as she slid her finger under the seal. The room was so quiet I could hear the soft rip of paper echo off the walls. My father leaned forward, his confidence slipping into suspicion. My mother whispered, "What is that?" But no one answered her. The lawyer unfolded the single sheet inside and adjusted her glasses. Her voice was steady but slower now, almost careful. This is a handwritten codicil, signed by Mr. Silas Whitman. It states... She paused, and I swear I saw her glance at me before continuing. He leaves the entirety of his estate, his land, his businesses, his accounts, his home, to his granddaughter, Harper Lane. The words didn't seem real at first. They hung in the air, heavy and sharp, before they landed. My father's face went pale, his jaw tightening. "That's impossible," he snapped. "This must be a mistake." Tessa shot out of her chair, her voice high and trembling. "No, he wouldn't do that. He loved all of us. He wouldn't just give everything to her?" Cole shook his head in disbelief. "This has to be forged. There's no way." He pointed a finger at me like I'd planned the whole thing. She probably tricked him when he was sick. "This doesn't count." I sat there still as stone, the pocket watch burning in my hand beneath the table. I knew that handwriting. I knew those words. Grandpa's voice rang in my head, the last thing he told me. "This is just the beginning." Ms. Pierce cleared her throat, holding up the page. It's signed, dated, and notarized. "This document is legally binding. Mr. Whitman was of sound mind when it was written. His instructions are clear." The room erupted. My mother's voice cracked as she begged. "There must be something else. Another clause. Another paper." My father slammed his fist on the table, his pride unraveling. "Over my dead body will she take everything." And still I said nothing. I let their anger swirl around me, the storm they never thought I'd survive. But inside, I felt something shift. For once, I wasn't the powerless one. I wasn't the shadow sitting in the corner. I was the name on that paper. Ms. Pierce looked at me and slid the pen across the table. "Harper, if you're ready, you can sign to acknowledge the transfer." I reached out slowly, my hand steady, my chest rising and falling with a calm I hadn't felt in years. I pressed the tip of the pen to the page, and as the ink flowed, silence fell over the room again. When I lifted my head, all their eyes were on me. Shock, rage, betrayal. But I only met their stares with the faintest smile. For the first time, they weren't laughing at me. They were afraid of losing everything, and I knew. This was exactly what Grandpa had planned. The pen felt heavier than it should have, like the weight of the entire room had sunk into that single moment. My hand didn't shake, though. Not this time. I pressed the tip down and signed my name, each letter sharp, steady, final. When the ink dried, it was done. Legally, officially, everything belonged to me. Ms. Pierce slid the papers back into her folder, her voice calm and absolute. "The estate is now transferred to Harper Lane." For a heartbeat, no one moved. It was like the world itself had stopped to hear those words. Then, all at once, the room erupted. My father shoved his chair back so hard it scraped against the floor. "This is outrageous!" His face was red, veins rising in his neck. "I built this family with your grandfather. I put in the work. She's done nothing." My mother's voice cracked as she leaned toward the lawyer. "Please, there must be something we can do." "You can't let this stand!" Tessa's eyes glistened with tears that weren't for Grandpa, but for herself. "You can't take this from us, Harper. You don't deserve it. You've always been nothing. Why would he give you everything?" Cole slammed his hand on the table. "She manipulated him. She's a liar. She's always been a liar." He looked at me with such hatred, like I had stolen the air he breathed. I let them rage. I let their words crash against me because for the first time they couldn't touch me. The papers were signed. The decision was real, and no amount of screaming could change that. I stood slowly, pushing my chair back, and the noise quieted just enough for my voice to carry. "You all spent your lives reminding me I was worthless. You laughed at me, dismissed me, made sure I never forgot where I stood. But he saw me. Grandpa saw me when none of you did. They stared at me, mouths half open, but I didn't give them time to interrupt. This isn't about money. It's about loyalty, about love. He knew who stayed when he needed someone. And it wasn't any of you." The words cut through their anger, leaving a silence that felt louder than all their shouting. My father's chest rose and fell like he was swallowing back something he couldn't say. My mother's hands trembled on her glass. Cole and Tessa looked away, like if they didn't meet my eyes, they could deny what was happening. The grandfather clock ticked in the corner, every second stretching the moment longer. I reached into my pocket and let the pocket watch dangle from its chain. The gold glinted in the light, proof that he had chosen me long before this day ever came. I looked at them one last time, calm and steady, and said, "You wanted me to be invisible, but now you'll never forget my name." And with that, I turned away, leaving them in the silence they had created for themselves. The papers were signed, the shouting had died down, but the room still buzzed with anger that clung to the air like smoke. I gathered the folder from the table, slid it under my arm, and stood up. Nobody moved. Nobody said a word. They just sat there frozen, staring at me as if they'd seen a ghost. For years they wanted me invisible, and now when they finally saw me, they couldn't stand it. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I simply walked to the door. The floor creaked under my steps, the only sound in that heavy silence. My father opened his mouth like he wanted to say something, but nothing came out. My mother's hand covered her face, and my siblings just stared at the table, unwilling to meet my eyes. I paused at the doorway, holding the pocket watch tight in my hand. I didn't need their words anymore. I left them sitting there, drowning in the same emptiness they had once fed me. Later that night, I sat alone at the kitchen table, the papers spread out in front of me. The house was quiet, except for the tick of the old clock in the hall. I ran my fingers across Grandpa's signature, written in his shaky but determined hand. The more I stared at it, the more it felt like he was sitting right there beside me, nodding, proud, reminding me that I mattered. The weight of it all pressed down on me. This wasn't just about money or land. It was about being seen, finally being chosen. After years of silence, I finally had a voice that no one could take away. I pulled the brass key from my pocket, the one he had given me in those final weeks, and turned it over in my hand. I still didn't know everything it unlocked, but I knew it was meant for me. Another piece of his trust, another reminder that I wasn't forgotten. I closed the papers, slid them neatly back into the folder, and pushed it aside. My eyes wandered to the watch on the table. I picked it up, let it rest in my palm, warm from my touch. I thought about all the times I had sat in that very house, listening to the laughter that excluded me, watching from the shadows. Tonight, those shadows were gone. When the first light of dawn crept through the curtains, I stepped outside onto the porch. The air was cool, still damp with morning dew. I held the pocket watch tightly, listening to the faint tick inside. It matched the beat of my heart, steady and alive. Behind me, the house stood silent. Inside, they would wake to a world where I held the power they had tried to strip from me. But out there, under that rising sun, I realized something. My revenge wasn't in what I took from them. It was in what Grandpa gave me, the chance to start over, on my own terms. And as the sky turned gold, I finally felt free. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you can join me for more powerful stories of revenge, drama, and life lessons. And I'd love to hear your own stories in the comments. Your voice matters here. And this is a place where we listen to each other,